Generally, we waste our lives distracted from our true selves in endless activity. Our lives are lived in intense and anxious struggle, in a swirl of speed and aggression, and our minds cannot stay still for longer than a few moments without grasping after distraction. We've also overindulged in thinking. Whatever thoughts, emotions rise, we let them sweep us away and off into a spiral of stories and illusions which we take so seriously that we end up not only believing but becoming as well. We are fragmented into so many different aspects that we don't know who the hell we are or who the heaven we are and what aspect of ourselves we should identify ourselves or believe in. We're always seeking, looking to find ourselves outside of ourselves. As one great master put it, it's like as if you leave the elephant at home and look for its footprints in the forest. So many contradictory voices that dictates and feelings fight over control over inner lives that we find ourselves scattered everywhere in all directions, leaving nobody at home. But regardless of who we are, the main purpose of life, we could call it the heart of being human, is to be happy. It is what we all wish, what we are all seeking, knowingly or unknowingly, for a lasting happiness that's free from suffering. Now here, you see, whenever His Holiness the Dalai Lama is asked by people how to be happy, they ask him, what's the art of happiness? How to be fine? How to be happy? You understand? And I heard him many times respond in the same way. And that is that, granted that external situations and circumstances do a certain extent contribute towards one's happiness and suffering, but fundamentally, happiness and suffering depend upon the mind and the heart. How the mind perceives through the five senses. Is that clear? And what's happened with us now, for example, is that really we've kind of lost ourselves. We've gone away from ourselves. In fact, I think some of you may have read the Tibetan Book of Living and Dying, some of you. Or there is also the teaching, the original teaching called the Tibetan Book of the Dead. There's a whole cycle of teaching on what is called life and death, or what is called the 6 transitions, or 4 transitions, because generally you divide the life into life and living, okay, dying, death, and after death. You understand? These 4 states are traditionally in the Tibetan Buddhist teachings, they are called, each of them, first one is known as life or living, is called natural part of this life. The second, the dying, is called the painful part of dying, particularly if you're not prepared. Third is called the luminous part of Dharmata, which is realizing the after death when the ultimate nature is revealed. There's an opportunity for liberation. Then the last is the kind of the karmic part of becoming. That's the after death states. In fact, they are known as pardos because each one of them is a transition. Even life is a transition. It's a gap. You understand? And so that in this teaching that really pertains to this, that you see the whole teaching on life and death, the main teaching, the main advice for this life, the main teaching for this life is that the problem with us, the teachings say, that we've lost our mind and into projections. You understand? that we have to purify our perception, our projection of the mind, and realize the essence of the mind, nature mind, because mind has two aspects. There's an appearance aspect of mind, and there is the essence or the nature, the essence of mind and the appearance of mind. You understand? The appearance of mind is all the thoughts and emotions. That's the appearance of mind. And the essence of mind is really the nature of mind. The trouble with us is we only know the appearance of mind, lost in the appearance, the projection. And you understand? And we have no idea of the nature mind itself. Just as always we're so much out there, too much out there, just out there, that we're always doing, speaking, thinking, that we've lost the sense of being. And in fact, we've lost connection from ourselves. We are split into so many aspects of ourselves, as said in the introduction. So much so that one great master put it that the samsara, I don't know whether how many of you understand the meaning of it. Actually, samsara is a Sanskrit word, ancient Sanskrit, which is like the Latin of the East, in that it means, in Tibetan, konkorwa means the kind of the cyclic existence, which is determined by what? Because from ignorance, negative emotions, negative karma or negative action result in suffering. The cyclic existence, birth and death, characterized by suffering. That's what samsara is. And often in samsara, what really happens is that, you see, even though we want happiness, we really, we actually completely kind of run away from those real causes which bring happiness as our worst enemy. You understand? Even though we want happiness, that we run away from the real causes of happiness, which we consider like our worst enemy. Whereas even though we don't want suffering, we run headlong. Says one great master called Shantideva. He said that. In the ignorance beings, you see, that the cause of suffering, they just think it's like the worst enemy and avoid it. Whereas that like suffering, they just kind of, run after headlong. So therefore, our aim and our actions are gone completely contrary to each other. Like a blind leading a blind. As one great master called it, that the samsara is mind turned outwardly, lost in its projection. That's what samsara is. Whereas nirvana, which means the cessation of suffering, which is the state of liberation, the state of ultimate peace, or you can call it the state of enlightenment, the nirvana, is in fact, nirvana on the other hand is mind turned inwardly, recognizing nature. So that samsara is mind turned outwardly, lost in its projection, whereas nirvana is mind turned inwardly, recognizing its true nature. In fact, often great masters said the difference between samsara and nirvana is just mind turned outwardly or mind turned inwardly. You understand? Now, when you say mind turned inwardly, it's not like introverted way. If you're just introvertedly kind of going around, that's also extroverted, but in an introverted way. But when I mean is the turn to recognize one's nature. Is that clear? Because at the moment you see the situation such that we're so much just out there doing things in action that we have no awareness of the actor, the doer. In fact, in the spiritual path, in meditation, the first step is called mindfulness, which is the opposite of distraction, opposite of mindlessness. Is that state is when suddenly when you turn your mind inwardly and begin to recognize the actor, the doer, begin to have some self-awareness of oneself, is the beginning of that process of mindfulness. You understand? In fact, mindfulness begins first before one can actually begin the meditation. There was one very great master, his name is Dutpchinjing. He was this great master who is the teacher of, he was the master of my master. And he is the one who the present Dalai Lama respects so much that his writings and his work, particularly on Dzogchen, which is the highest teaching in the Tibetan tradition, the work of Dutpchen Jigme is the main source of his own Dalai Lama's own personal study. So I remember when, in around 1980s, when many Tibetan, in India, when he gives teachings like in a place, Buddhist enlightenment place called Buddha Gaya, or others, when there are thousands of monks and nuns, and then many great learned geshes and rinpoches and lamas there, he would always say how extraordinary this work of Dutpchen Jigme. He would ask all the learned lamas to study that teaching. He was an extraordinary master. And he had a very central teaching on how to transform suffering and happiness into enlightenment. You understand? How to work with difficult circumstances. And a teaching that comes from what is called the great contemplative master of the past, the great, the compassionate masters, such as the great master like Shantideva and others. That extraordinary teaching on the mind training, the training of the mind, transforming the mind in compassion. And in that teaching, this very essential teaching on how to transform suffering and happiness into enlightenment. Because sometimes you see, when you say, well, suffering, of course, you understand you need to transform suffering, but happiness you think is okay. But actually, happiness is the biggest problem. There's a famous saying, human beings can cope with a lot of suffering, but with very little happiness. They cannot cope with happiness. They're babies with happiness. Because what happens when happiness comes, we get attached and then we just spoil it. Anyway, in that teaching, one of the main things he says that, you see, the foolish go looking for happiness outside of themselves. And when you look outside of themselves, you have no control. And sometimes the things don't work out, they never work out as you planned, because, it's not under your control even. Whereas the wise realize that actually the happiness and all the cause of happiness are actually present within ourselves. It's within our reach. How is that? Is that if we work with the mind and heart and able to conquer our mind and our heart, then we can conquer all our perception and our experience, and thereby we're able to conquer all the appearances, phenomena, and you can say you can conquer the world. You're truly victorious. Like look at His Holiness Dalai Lama, this extraordinary being. Why he's so extraordinary? It's because he's completely conquered his mind. Is that clear? So that in fact, when you realize that actually happiness actually is all happiness and cause of happiness are all within oneself, then actually it gives us really hope. Because you can do something about it. Because it's with you. By working, because mind is with you. When I say mind, I also mean heart. Okay? You understand? Mind, heart. Because in the teachings, when you talk about mind, it really also means the heart. So, very much you see, when we work with the mind and heart, really, and really, just as His Holiness said, I quoted earlier that, granted that external situations, circumstances, to a certain extent, contribute to one's suffering and happiness, but fundamentally, suffering and happiness depend upon the mind, how the mind perceives through the five senses. So therefore, if you conquer your mind, you see, then you conquer the whole perception. That is the path of meditation. That's the path of compassion. I remember His Holiness Dalai Lama often used to say that the main point of the teaching of Buddha is not about ceremonies, not about monasteries, not about temples, not about rituals. It's about transforming the mind. Transforming the mind. As Buddha himself said, because I remember saying here before that the teaching of Buddha is very vast. I think I said that before. That just the word of Buddha alone, volume over 100. Not to talk of the work of the great Indian masters. So there's this very vast approach in Buddhism, which is the approach of the learned and the pandits. But also, there is a very central, very profound path for those who really are practitioners, the meditators, the yogis. In fact, there is a way that you see, when Buddha was asked to centralize his teachings, what is the essence of the teachings? He said, in Tibetan, Dikpachum Majashin Gyawapusum Sopache, Ranga Semyong Sundundan Sangitambai. You understand? Dikpachum Majashin means, this really actually, I always share this because it really essentializes, it encapsulates the entire teaching of the Buddha. Because Buddha teachings actually, Buddha was an extraordinary, you can say, master, who through his enlightenment saw that everyone, without exception, had the same potential as him, the potential of enlightenment. You understand? But then he saw, because of ignorance, they failed to see their true nature. So he's very much moved by the suffering, because created out of ignorance, negative emotion, negative karma. He was very moved and wanted to really show each and every one of us the way of really realizing our own nature, or how do you say, realizing our own potential, the potential of what is called ultimate happiness, which is enlightenment. In fact, in Buddhism, when you talk about enlightenment, people sometimes think, oh, enlightenment, that's not for me. It's only for holy men and women. But actually, really, actually speaking, knowing or knowingly or not, or unknowingly, we actually all seeking for happiness, or I blurted out anyway, happiness, which is basically what I mean by seeking for enlightenment, actually ultimate. Because what enlightenment is the lasting and ultimate happiness, which is free of sorrow, which is free of suffering and the cause. Because what creates suffering is ignorant negative emotion and negative karma, one that has been purified. And when we realize the potential, the omniscience, you see, the potential of enlightenment, then each one of us can realize our true natures. Often I think that, you see, I do not like the word Buddhism, because Buddhism limits Buddhism, because it's not an ism at all. But because people say Buddhism, so we say Buddhism. And it's not also a Tibetan word anyway, it's English word. So it is not Buddha, Shakyamuni's, his way, his doctrine, his approach, his line that we are following. Ultimately, actually, what really, if you were to use Buddhism, is a way for each one of us to realize our Buddha nature and become a Buddha. So our Buddha's way for each one of us to realize our potential complete enlightenment is what Buddhism really is. Is that clear? That's why Buddha taught in so many ways. He taught in 84,000 different ways that to be. And all of them, when we kind of boil them down, fundamentally, it turned into what are called three vehicles of the teaching of Buddha. I know there are some Buddhist practitioners here, so for their benefit, that's called the basic vehicle, which is sometimes known as Theravada tradition. Then there is the Mahayana, the Bodhisattva vehicle, and there's the Vajrayana. Understand? In fact, this reason why I mentioned this is that because when we talk about when Buddha was asked to centralize his teachings, when he said, Dikpachum Mijajin, Gyawapusum Sokpache, Rangasam Niyonsulu, these 3 lines actually point to this 3 vehicle teaching of Buddha in an essential way. That's to say, when he said, first line, Dikpachum Mijajin, when you translate roughly into English, it means, commit not a single unwholesome action. Well, then you might say, but how could I possibly not commit a single unwholesome action? What it really means is that as much as possible, abandon all the unwholesome, negative, and harmful actions which are the cause of suffering for yourself and others. Is that clear? And that is the basis of the first vehicle of the teaching of the Buddha. The main essence of that is not to harm others. As great Tibetan masters always say, if you can't help, at least don't harm. And most important of all, don't keep malice and hatred in your heart. Keep your heart and mind pure. If you can't help, at least don't harm. Is that clear? And next is then, if you can, then next line is Gyawapunsun Sopache, meaning cultivate a wealth of virtue. That is to say, as much as possible, adopt, on the other hand, as much as possible, adopt all the positive and wholesome and beneficial actions which are the cause of happiness for ourselves and others. So here when we come to this, it refers to the Bodhisattva vehicle, the Mahayana, where the emphasis is upon the altruism, about the development of love and compassion, which is developing cultivating the wealth of virtue. Is that clear? Hello. Now the third and the last, he says, Rangasem Niyonsundu. This is the most important thing. Rangasem Niyonsundu is to tame this mind of ours. Rang means oneself, Sem is mind, Ndul is to tame. To tame this mind of ours, to transform this mind of ours, to understand this mind of ours, to realize this mind of ours, to conquer this mind of ours. In fact, that is the basis of Vajrayana. But then, if you were to really put it, that many great masters always say, great Tibetan masters always say that if you were to really say, what is the essence of the teaching of the Buddha? It is this, Rangasem Niyonsundu, the last line, the third line, to tame this mind of ours. You understand? To tame this mind of ours. To transform this mind. Because if you conquer your mind, then you will naturally be refraining from harm, you naturally be cultivating virtue. Because when you look at it, who really harms, who really helps, is the mind or the heart. Because we have 3 things called body, speech, and mind. They are known as in the teachings the 3 doors. That means through these 3, we do positive things or we accumulate negative karma or negative actions. Is that clear? But of these 3 things, the body and speech are just merely subservient to the mind. Mind or heart is really the boss. Boss. Understand? That's why often in the Tibetan teachings, mind is the boss. When the masters always said the essence of the teaching of Buddha is Rangasem Niyonsundu, which means to tame this mind of ours, to train this mind of ours, to transform this mind of ours, to conquer this mind of ours, to understand this mind of ours, to realize its true nature. Because at the moment you see what is happening is we're lost merely in the appearance of the mind. You understand? Because normally people in the West, in the modern world, whenever you talk about mind, they have no idea what mind is. They just think of only thoughts, emotions. Thoughts, emotions, they think is the mind. But thoughts, emotions are merely the appearance or the radiance or the manifestation of the mind. Not the mind itself. The ground from which everything rises. What Buddhism speaks about really is to turn your mind inwardly, recognize the essence of mind. Because if you realize the essence of the mind, by realizing that, by understanding that, you understand all. And I was saying that, you see, Buddha said, you see, because you asked me to repeat, Buddha, when he was really essentializing teaching, he said, commit not a single unwholesome action, which means as much as possible, try to abandon all the unwholesome, the negative and harmful actions of the body, speech and mind, which are the cause of suffering for oneself and others. On the other hand, he says, cultivate the wealth of virtue, which means as much as possible to adopt all the positive, beneficial and wholesome actions which are the cause of happiness for ourselves and others. Is that clear? And the most important of all really is to tame this mind of ours, because the mind is the root of all. In Tibetan it's known as Kunje Gyalpo. That means mind is the universal ordering principle. Is the creator of happiness and the creator of suffering. And the creator of what we call samsara and the creator of what we call nirvana is the mind. In fact, when you look deeply, that if you conquer the mind, you see, then by conquering the mind, you will naturally be refraining from harm. You will naturally be cultivating virtue. You understand? Because at the moment, we are not tamed. We are wild. Our minds are wild. You understand? We're just out there lost. We have no idea of ourselves. Lost the complete sense of our being. That's why I also always say that we are scattered everywhere and that nobody's at home. So that we miss ourselves. Basically, also it means that, you see, really the wise and the learned and the enlightened ones actually realize that actually happiness and all the cause of happiness are within ourselves. It's only the foolish look for happiness outside of themselves. A very famous traditional example is keeping the elephant at home but looking for its footprints in the forest. You understand? Actually, you're not looking for the footprint, you're looking for the elephant, but then you keep the elephant at home, but look for its footprints to find the elephant, while elephant is always here anyway. Especially this elephant, yeah. The wise and the learned realize that all the happiness and cause of happiness are within ourselves. That is to say, if we conquer the mind and heart, then we conquer all our perception and experience. When you conquer that, then you conquer after a while even the appearance, the circumstance, and the whole phenomena that you conquer. In fact, you conquer the world. Like many of the great masters, like the Dalai Lama. So extraordinary about him. For example, when he comes to even to an assembly about 10,000, 20,000, when he just comes in, immediately everybody feels kind of different. Why? Because as his mind is tamed, as he conquers his mind and perception, he can conquer also the perception of others also. You understand? In Tibetan, it's Rana Wandi Yenang Surjine. If you conquer your mind, then you conquer the perception of others. You can conquer the phenomena. then you're truly victorious. And so that really, when we conquer the mind, then we find that all the cause of happiness are within ourselves. You understand? We don't have to look outside. In this great master called Padmasambhava, who brought the teaching of Buddha to Tibet, and is often considered as the second Buddha. Often Tibetans call him affectionately as Guru Rinpoche, which means precious master. He said, in his very famous teaching, he said, don't seek to cut the root of phenomena, cut the root of the mind. If you cut the root of the mind, you will know one thing which resolves all. If you don't cut the root of the mind, you will know everything but forever stuck on one. Another translation of this, because it's a little bit difficult, this passage in English, difficult to render this in English translation. Another translation is, don't investigate the root of things, investigate the root of the mind. Once the mind's root has been found, you will know one thing, yet all is thereby freed. But if the root of mind you fail to find, you will know everything but nothing understand. If you conquer the mind, then you see you have the master key that opens all the doors. And what's wonderful, you find yourself when you open that door. Find yourself. And what happiness. Also, Buddha, in his very famous teaching called Dhammapada, in which very famous Buddhist scripture called, he said, we are what we think. Of course, the Californians say, we are what we eat. Buddha said, we are what we think. All that we are rise with the thoughts. With the thoughts we make the world. So speak or act with pure mind and happiness will follow. You see, because actually the mind is like a crystal. Whatever you place under the crystal, it takes that form. You understand? If you put a green cloth, it becomes green. Yellow cloth, it becomes yellow. In the same manner, mind, whatever we occupy, if you have negative thought, it becomes negative. If you have positive thought, it becomes positive. So that's why Buddha said, we are what we think. All that we are. We have the choice what to think. And it is the thinking that makes the karma. And thinking that actually makes our world, the karmic phenomena. Very much. So we are what we think. All that we are rise with the thoughts. With the thoughts we make the world. So speak or act the pure mind and happiness follow. On the other hand, we are what we think. All that we are rise with the thoughts. With the thoughts we make the world. Speak or act with impure mind and trouble will follow. So, but the wonderful thing about it is that, you see, the wonderful thing about it, as Dalai Lama often quotes, as one great master, Tibetan master of mind training, great master, he said that once remarked that one of the mind's most marvelous quality is that it can be transformed. So there's hope. Is that clear? In fact, in speaking of this title, like finding peace and happiness, finding peace, compassion and wisdom in a compassionate world, in a complex world, actually is really, in many ways, is the essence of, you see, when you talk about the really, you know, when I said that Buddha gave three major teachings, isn't it? We call the three yanas, the three ways of teaching Buddha. Is that all the teaching of the Buddha, you see, if you really sum it up, all these three ways of teaching Buddha, basically it's about peace, compassion, and wisdom. You understand? The entire teaching of Buddha can be summed up into peace, compassion, wisdom. Like, for example, the basic teaching of Buddha is to bring about the inner peace of calm abiding. And the Mahayana, the Bodhisattva vehicle, is to develop compassion. The Vajrayana is to develop wisdom. But that doesn't mean, again, wisdom is not in the basic vehicle. Compassion is not in the basic vehicle. It does exist. For example, peace, compassion, wisdom are throughout all the teaching, but the emphasis in each of the vehicle is, in the basic vehicle is peace, in the Mahayana is compassion, in the Vajrayana is wisdom. Is that clear? Now, when we speak of mind, what is, in the teachings it said, what is the quality of mind? The quality of mind, or the nature of mind, the quality of mind, is to know. To know. You understand? To know. K-N-O-W, know. But unfortunately, the ego has misused the knowing mind to grasp. So the whole point of the teaching practice is to free the mind from its grasping to return to the pure knowing. Now, if I want to present this a little bit more in detail or in depth, is that if we examine this mind more deeply, or if we were to ask, what is the definition of the mind? Definition of mind is conscious, cognizant, and aware. These three is key. It really speaks to the heart of mind. In fact, the quality of mind is to know. If you sum it up, its quality of mind is know. But if you really develop it, it's conscious, cognizant, and aware. Is that clear? But within this mind that is conscious, cognizant, and aware, there are 8 divisions, or 8 consciousness. This goes to the root of the Buddhist psychology also, and also in terms of meditation too. 8 divisions or 8 consciousnesses. Now, first 5 are the 5 sensory consciousness, which are based on 5 sense organs, like the eye, the ear, the nose, the tongue, the body. You understand that? 5 sensory consciousnesses. So, when you take 5 from 8, how many are you left with? 3. The remaining 3 are mental consciousness. You got it? Now, of these 3 mental consciousness, 2 are active and 1 is inactive. Not passive, just inactive. In fact, it is the 6th and 7th are the ones that are active, and the 8th is inactive. Now, if you were to ask, how does these consciousness work together? Let's take the example of a flower. An object, the flower, is seen by the means of the eye consciousness, which is one of the 5 sensory consciousnesses. At the same moment the flower is seen, it is registered in the 6th consciousness. The 6th is called the mental consciousness. It's the aspect of mind that cognizes and that discerns. The 6th simply knows, recognizes that flower is a flower. It simply notices, it simply understands, and it simply differentiates between information that is presented to the 5 senses. But the problem comes in the next instant, as the seventh consciousness enters the process. Because the seventh consciousness is what's called the defiled consciousness. It's the conceptual, judgmental, the reactive. That's where the grasping rises, that's where the story comes. Stories, the cinema. In Tibetan called Nyun. Nyun is Nyomong, which is conflicting emotions, which sound like Nyun, sound like Ni 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 Ni. Basically, seventh is the Ni 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 mind. Like for example, when you see a flower, the sixth simply recognizes flower, but the seventh says that, oh, I like it, or I don't like it, or I hate it, or less. You understand? So therefore, when you say I like it, or I don't like it, or I'm different, then what happens is the seeds of what is called three poisons, which is the desire, the anger, and the ignorance are sown. So it is this juncture between the sixth and seventh where we have to watch out. A problem is the gap between the sixth and seventh is so short that we react too quickly. So the whole point of the meditation is to remain as long as possible in the sixth consciousness. You understand? So in order to slow down the reaction of the seventh, to put seventh to sleep, to become less reactive. That's why sometimes meditation, see, once you mastered, when you, like for example, I will come up the method a little bit later also, but when you start doing like when you're watching the breath or, watching an object, or when you're really practicing, while practicing that, you see, suddenly a kind of thought or emotion arises, you see. And then it is registered in the sixth consciousness saying it's an emotion, it's a thought. Now in meditation, the discipline is just to remain in that. That is to say, when a thought comes, just to say it's a thought. Even when an anger comes, it's just an anger. You don't get involved. You leave it there. Oh, anger. Oh, desire. It's called labeling. There's neither Jungian nor Freudian analysis involved. Just you leave them as they are. What is amazing is when you leave anger as anger, desire as desire, and you really deal with them very directly, very objectively, not very subjective, but objectively. Just that. What's amazing is that actually they dissolve. Because generally, you have to have subject, object, and activity. If there is not an object, anger on its own cannot rest. Desire on its own cannot. You understand? It must have something to feed on. When there is nothing to project on, then the anger itself dissolves also. In fact, there is even a greater method after that, after when you really conquer that drive, that is to really not only just to say anger is anger, but really look directly, after you've been able to do that, to arrive at the point where you can just look directly into the face of anger. Saying, who the hell are you, really? Anyway. And it dissolves. It's like shining a light in the darkness. As soon as you shine the light, the darkness dissolves. So that you create more space between the sixth and the seventh, giving the possibility of transformation. Because the seventh consciousness is not altogether bad, because it has a two aspects. It has a confused aspect and liberating aspect. It can be also realized into wisdom if you train it properly, if you purify it. That's one of the reasons why one way to overcome the seventh is through the wisdom of listening and hearing, through the wisdom of contemplation and reflection, through wisdom of meditation application. You begin to purify the judgmental, the conceptual. You purify it. So much so that there may come that time when there is maybe the kind of the ordinary, habitual, reactive mind, the seventh consciousness may appear, the new, the conflicting, the yin mind may rise. But as soon as it rises also, there is also wisdom accompanying there. You understand it? It's like when a negative emotion rises, immediately you have your inner wisdom that encounters that kind of, you can say almost defeats in duel. You understand? I mean, that's putting it dramatically, but just overcomes that and realize, you see, begins to really dissolve, like shine the light into the darkness and dissolve it. And also, you see, through meditation training, one of the most important things is to develop not only mindfulness, but vigilance. Vigilance, so much so that in the very, very famous teaching called the 8 verses of the training of the mind and compassion, in that it is said, may I examine all my actions, you see. May I examine my mind in all actions. When I see a negative emotion or negative thought rises, immediately may I realize that since it says danger, because it endangers me and others, may I firmly face it or avert it. That is to say, whenever, may I always be mindful and vigilant. When a negative thought or emotion arises, you see, immediately you realize the consequence, because normally people don't see the consequence. Just get carried away. Don't see the consequence of the action. You understand? As great masters always say, we sacrifice the long-term benefit for a short-term pleasure. We don't think of long-term consequence, and we just simply go for the short-term pleasure. Like sometimes you see, out of anger, in passion, we maybe stab somebody or kill somebody. Then what the rest of your life is gone. We lose sanity. We need sanity. We need reason. One of the most important things human beings have reason, judgment, clear judgment. Buddhism encourages very much that kind of, to develop that cognitive, that aspect of that discernment. Because when you talk about compassion, compassion is not just empathy. Compassion is like, for example, put it this way, someone who's very wise and intelligent, at the same time somebody has a very good heart and warm and compassionate. You understand? That is you must have the aspect of the intelligence as well as, you understand? As well as of heart and of empathy. So therefore, whenever you see a negative thoughts, emotion come, you see it will endanger you and others. You see, you develop an early warning system so that you catch it before it catches you, and you avert it. If you keep doing that again and again, working mindfully again and again, then habit will change. There come a time that you'll be able to eradicate. You can change the habits. Because the moment is just habits. We just give in to. We can give in to the seventh consciousness. Is that clear? So now the eighth consciousness is really, the eighth is, you see, it's called the ground of all, how do you say, all ground consciousness. In Tibetan called Kujna Varshipa. It is where It is where all the memories, the karmas, you see, is the storehouse of your mind, you see. It's where all the memory, all the karmas are stored. And that from a Buddhist therapeutic point of view, that because in our memory all these seeds are there, you understand? Of sad, of sorrow, and happiness, joy, all these things are there. From a Buddhist therapeutic point of view, first you water the seeds of joy. That is to say, first you really encourage the positive aspect of yourself. Strengthen the positive aspect of yourself. It doesn't mean you ignore the negative aspect. That you need to face, but not yet. Because if you go for the negativity, you become its casualty. First you develop the positive aspect. Strengthen the positive aspect of your being. And once you are really strong, then you can even look at negativity with positivity. And by that time, negative is not so negative, because your frame of mind is positive. Because your perception is pure, you don't see so much problem. You don't see, there's not so much fear or there's not so much anxiety. Understand? Because normally, always the problem with us is that we don't know how we will handle ourselves, isn't it? When we take a job or something, we are afraid of ourselves, not of the job, but how we handle. If you know how to conquer your mind and know yourself, and then you can handle anything, then in every situation you will be at ease. Because you can handle everything. And you have confidence in yourself that you can do so. So that in the Buddhist teachings is that slowly purify the storehouse of your mind or the karma, you see? Purify that, purify, so that you see your heart and mind becomes pure, and so that the seven consciousness becomes more wisdom. You understand? That is the way of liberation, of bringing about enlightenment. Is that helpful for you? Because this is really key to. I find, for example, when I heard these teachings, because these teachings are very, very, how do you say, very profound teachings, but often they're presented very, very complexly. So it took me a long time to find really how to teach this in a simple way. And when I found the simple way, I found to be so profound and so helpful. Now, having said that, now we need to work with mind. We need to work to slow down the sixth. That practice is called meditation. As we said earlier, the problem with us is, firstly, our minds are all over and nobody's at home. So we need to bring our mind home. Therefore, meditation is bringing the mind home. As the French philosopher Pascal once said, that all of men's difficulties are caused by his inability to sit quietly in a room by himself. And secondly, our minds are always distracted, and when they are distracted, the antidote is mindfulness. So the purpose of meditation is, like sometimes when you talk about meditation, people have all kinds of concepts about it. But by the way, recently, I will share with you, there have been certain research. There's been a lot of research that's been happening now. A lot of research has been going, scientific research, going about because more seeing the connection between body and mind. And particularly his own Dalai Lama is very interested that he's been working with a number of the top scientists for over 11 years now. And the results have been quite astounding. In fact, actually some of my own friends, 5 Tibetan Lamas were examined. And also recently in actually Harvard University, there was a big kind of conference where His Holiness was there, and then the research was revealed. There was quite, in America, in the scientific community, there's a lot of excitement about this new research and the results that's been come through. And that is that using scanning scanning techniques to examine brain activity. Scientists at the University of America, I think it was Wisconsin, Madison, Wisconsin, studied the effects of the Buddhist practices for cultivating compassion, equanimity, mindfulness, and also visualization, one-pointed concentration, devotion, fearlessness, and rikpa, which is the resting in the nature mind. And the test on the experienced Buddhist practitioner, some of these lamas, it says that in scientific research that if you have to test, if 5 people, the result is the same and better, then you can release the result. So the 5 lamas were. In fact, what was amazing, the results were one was better than the other. And the tests on these experienced Buddhist practitioners, which are these lamas, show a high level of activity in the parts of brain that help to form positive emotions, such as happiness, enthusiasm, joy, and self-control. Tests show, here I'm just essentializing because the research is much more, but the tests show that this area of the brain is constantly lit up. Not just when they're meditating, but when they're not meditating, it's also lit up. And also, results have shown that mindfulness meditation among people who are not Buddhists, that means say Buddhist meditation, mindfulness, when taught to people who are not necessarily Buddhist, Western people, American people, when they're taught to them, it has shown, the results have shown to strengthen the neurological, how do you pronounce it? Circuits, how do you say? Circuits that calm the parts of brain that act as a trigger for fear and anger. And also, researchers at another university have shown that these same lamas, these practitioners, can reach a state of inner peace even when facing extremely disturbing circumstances. There were like all kinds of noises and all kinds of, to bring. It showed that they really can reach a state of inner peace even when facing extremely disturbing circumstances. And also what was really amazing, this is what even amazed them more, is they have an unusual capacity for empathy and to the attunement to emotions to other people. They can understand others' emotions, feel. That kind of receptivity was found to be quite amazing. Normally, it's very difficult. They show certain examples of faces and images, and normally people don't pick it up, but they pick up immediately that what this face or expression are actually saying. So also the practice seemed to tame the areas of the brain that the meditation practice seemed to tame the area of the brain which is the center for fear memory. So therefore, you see, reason why I mention is because when, for example, this research came, so that I saw Time magazine had whole thing on meditation. And what they simplified, meditation, they said, is 4 things. Find a quiet place, close your eyes, and say a word again and again. Repeat a word. Such oversimplification. People think that meditation. People actually sometimes have no idea what meditation is. Because meditation is sometimes just, these kind of meditation is just more stress relieving. Some kind of more just, finding a little bit of peace, a little bit of quietness. It's like, you say detoxing, de-stressifying kind of meditation. But the real purpose of meditation is not about just finding, releasing and stress removal. That will help in the process anyway. But in fact, the purpose of meditation is to awaken in us the sky-like nature of mind. That is to say, purpose of the meditation is to discover our true nature, the essence of mind. Do you understand? In fact, there is one very famous saying I remember when I heard this about 30 years ago, maybe now 40 years actually, from a great Tibetan master. First time when I heard it, it had a tremendous impact for me. These two lines in Tibetan. Because what it showed to me is what is the nature of mind, what is the essence nature of mind, and also how to abide by the recognition of that, which is what really meditation. Because what really meditation is, in the higher sense, is to abide by the recognition. When you have a glimpse of the ultimate nature, when you have the glimpse of understanding of your ultimate nature, when that's revealed to you, and then when you continue to abide by that recognition of that, that is meditation. In fact, I don't know whether some of you read the Tibetan book of Living and Dying. In chapter 5 is the chapter of meditation. And in that, there's the story of this great Indian he was a great Indian diplomat. He was the representative of Indian government in Tibet, because before, you see, there's called young husband. During the British reign in India, there was called young husband expedition into Tibet. And he left a certain mission there in Tibet. And later, when India got independence, that India took over that mission, and he was the first representative. This man called Appapant. And later he became the representative of India, the government of India, in a place called, kingdom called Sikkim, which is up in the Himalayas near Darjeeling, where tea comes from. And in fact, now that kingdom is annexed by India and has become part of one of the new states of India. But in fact, that kingdom was very important, because when Tibetans came as refugees, many, many great teachers like Karmapa and many of the lamas, my master, they all came into Sikkim. So he was extraordinarily kind to all the Tibetan refugees and the many lamas. He did a lot of support. And he became a very great disciple of my master, a really ardent disciple of my master. And he would always ask my master how to meditate, always. What it really means, how to abide the recognition of nature of mind. So one day, when he was watching a lama dance, a sacred dance, my master was enjoying, still he was pestering with the translator, saying how to meditate. So my master said in such a way, saying, look, he said, this Appapant himself told me, when he spoke about this, he had actually tears in his eyes. That time when he told me, he was then the High Commissioner of India in London, he was that time. And then he said that when my master told him, look, when past thought has ceased, before a future thought had risen, isn't there a gap? Then Appapant said, yes. Then my master said, well, prolong it. That's meditation. So these two famous lines in Tibetan is very beautiful. It's called Chumanyuk Natang Semmachunade. I may have shared this with you last time also, but even if I shared, it's very good to repeat, because we forget many times. As my master used to say, more and more you listen, more and more you hear. The more and more you hear, the deeper understanding becomes. Often masters recommend that when you read a very important text or study a very important teaching, that one should read minimum 7 times. Minimum 7 times. In fact, I noticed that sometimes I have on the tape or on CD some of my masters, teaching of my masters. And some important ones, when I listen to them over again and again, each time I listen, I begin to hear something I've not heard before. Because as my understanding develops, that I begin to hear something, that something gets revealed. You understand? So more and more you read, the more and more you study, more and more you listen, more and more you hear. And so this one Tibetan is very beautiful. chu manyok na tang sem machuna de. What does that mean? Chu is in Tibetan, the word for chu means water. Water. Manyok is if you don't stir it. Na tang means it will be clear. So that's say water, if you don't stir it, will become clear. That's a fact, isn't it? In the same manner, sem machina, in the same manner, sem means mind. The nature of mind is such that if you do not manipulate or contrive or fabricate by too much thinking. In fact, the problem is, the root cause of all our problem, or in fact, many authorities on mental health, they often say that if you take all the books on psychology and reduce them into one word, the root cause of all mental problem is too much thinking. So it's too much thinking, too much doing, too much speaking. We've lost the sense of being. So that you see, so that just as water, if you don't stir it, it will become clear. In the same manner, the nature mind is such that if you do not contrive, if you do not fabricate, but if you remain in the unaltered, and the key in Tibetan is sem machu na de. Sem means mind, machu is if you don't alter it, don't alter. You know alter? Don't change, don't alter it. I'm not talking about the church altar. No, alter, do not change. If you don't change the mind, if you don't alter the mind. Just as water, if you don't stir it, it will become clear. In the same manner, the nature mind is such, if you don't alter it, then it will find its peace, well-being, happiness, and bliss. So that's why really, when you leave your mind, you see, unaltered. You leave it in its true nature. You understand? In fact, in the great, for example, what is called the Mahamudra, or the Dzogchen, which are the highest teaching in the Tibetan tradition, in those teachings they say that the essence and the foundation, if you were to say what is really meditation, the essence and the foundation of meditation is the state of non-distraction. You see, meditation is actually the state of non-distraction. You understand? While not necessarily meditating on anything. In Tibetan, Mayingpala Magompa. Mayingpa is undistracted, Magompa is while not meditating on anything. So the essence of meditation is the state of non-distraction. When you remain in the state of non-distraction, in the state of nowness, and remain unaltered, slowly, out of the nowness, in the present moment, the gap, that like the past thought sees future that cannot come, in the present moment, our true nature, the cognizant, the pure nature mind, the pristine of pure awareness, the conscious, cognizant, and aware nature mind dawns. Is that clear? That's the wisdom mind. The ordinary mind has died, and you see, and then how would you say, that our pristine pure awareness, the transcendent mind, the wisdom mind dawns. That's the state of the Buddhahood, that really the enlightened mind begins to awaken. But then you see, many of us, we cannot start there straight away, isn't it? Because we cannot remain in the state of non-distraction straight away. Why? Because we are distracted, we're too much used to thinking. So therefore, because for those people who cannot arrive there, then we need help. I'm putting it in ordinary language. So we need a method, we need a support. So hence the meditation with the method. It could be using an image of Buddha as an object of practice. Could be also the use of a sound of a mantra. And then one that is common to all schools of Buddhism, and one that is embraced by many other disciplines is lightly, mindfully watching the breath. You understand? Lightly, mindfully watching the breath. Because breath is life. For example, I always say, to die is very simple. You breathe out, you can't breathe in, it's it. And also, the breath is connected with energy called prana. Prana, the inner air. And that, in fact, is the aspect of the really, because mind has two aspects. It has a clarity aspect, it has a movement aspect. When you're very nervous, when your energy is very nervous, then you think so many thoughts. It's so speedy, isn't it? Because but the prana, the lung is disturbed. Because according to Tibetan medicine, you see, it is said that many of the people in the West are very disturbed in that lung energy, which is the reason why they have a lot of mental problems, such as depression, agitation, nervous breakdown, and so on. So therefore, in a sense that also, that since the movement aspect of the mind is the lung, the breath, that's why when we are mindful of the breath, we are actually taming the breath, we are taming the prana, we are taming the lung. When we tame that, by taming that also, it's like, for example, the wind or this prana is the vehicle of the mind. When the vehicle or the car stops, the driver stops also, isn't it? You understand? So when the prana is calm, the mind also settles also. So it's like by working with the prana, with the breath, is another way of also calming the mind. Because it's difficult at the beginning to work directly with the mind. You have to work subtly with the mind. Is that clear? And so, in that, what is important is the mindfulness. Now, when you say mindfulness, is just being aware. And in that, what is important is that you see, just as earlier I've said that, you see, the knowing mind, the quality of mind is to know, and that, unfortunately, this knowing mind has been misused by the ego to grasp. So the whole point is to free the mind from its grasping and return to pure knowing, isn't it? So therefore, what we are doing here is in meditation, in mindfulness, we are practicing, the whole process is how to free the mind from its, concepts, from the dualistic mind, the grasping, to free the grasping, and return to pure knowing. So therefore, when we practice mindfulness, what we're using is just the pure knowing mind, just the pure awareness, just the pure attention. You understand? Not the conceptual mind, not the thinking mind, just the knowing mind. So that when you breathe out, just to know that you're breathing out. When you breathe in, you just know that you're breathing in. You see? There's neither Freudian nor Jungian analyst involved. There's not even saying, oh, now I'm breathing out, now I'm breathing in, now I'm breathing out. There's no such also running commentary. Just being mindful. When you breathe out, just know that you're breathing out. When you're breathing, just know that you're breathing. In fact, that pure attention, we can say, I've been doing some meditation, some retreats with some of the Christian monks. And one of them, actually in a Christian meditation, he would call it, he's been doing meditation with also his own Dalai Lama. And he used to call it this kind of pure attention, it's called the divine attention. Mindfulness divine, whereas mindlessness is where the devil comes. You know the saying comes, idle mind is the devil's workshop. The mindfulness is divine. You understand? Very much so that you see that the pure mindfulness, practicing mindfulness. But then you notice that you see, mindful alone is not enough, because after a few minutes of this mindfulness practice, you are everywhere but on the breath. You may be starring in your own movie or playing in Australian, Open Championship, becoming the world bigger, or I don't know what, becoming enlightened or something like that. So, therefore, mindfulness alone is not enough. You need another. It is said that generally 25% of your mind, 25% of attention should be devoted to mindfulness, whereas another 25% should be devoted to a continual awareness that oversees that you're being mindful of the breath. And then the rest of the 50% is left abiding spaciously. Spaciously. You understand? As one great Zen master put it, the way to control cow or sheep is to give a big grazing field. In the same manner with mind, how to tame the mind is to give a big space. In fact, sometimes you see, whenever you're stressed, by the way, whenever you're stressed, what you do, you just breathe and just give yourself space. There's plenty of space inside. Give yourself a little bit of space and you can dissolve the tension inwardly. You understand? So that's why very important. Spaciousness is important. That when you remain in meditation, in the state of remaining, you see three things in meditation: remaining, mindfulness, and awareness. Remaining is 50%, but left abiding very spaciously. Then mindfulness 25% and awareness 25%. Is that clear? In fact, I think, as I said to you, I'm taking you a little bit deeper. These teachings actually come from the highest teachings called the Mahamudra and the Dzogchen teachings, from the instructional meditation, from the great, instructions from the great masters of, such as like Milarepa. You heard of Milarepa, these great masters. From there these teachings come. It is said, reason why I'm reading this is because this is based on the teachings I've given before, and I've really encapsulated them very essentially so that to save time. It is said that one should train in letting the mind remain. Because, by the way, this practice, the first practice in Buddhist meditation is called shamatha in Sanskrit, Tibetan called shine, which means calm abiding, or peacefully remaining. It's practice of tranquility. You understand? So in that very important, as you say, calm abiding, peacefully remaining, the remaining aspect is important. So therefore, it is said that one should first train in the mind, train in letting the mind remain. It is said that we have to cultivate this remaining or abiding, thus stabilizing the mind. Because actually the whole meditation purpose first is to stabilize the mind, to settle the mind, If you keep the water still and do not stir it, it will become clear like that, So, it is said that one should train in letting the mind remain. So we have to cultivate this remaining and thus stabilizing the mind. Because actually, the original word for meditation in Sanskrit is called dhyana. In Chinese it's called chan. Japanese is called zen. Tibetan something, which means stabilizing the mind. In fact, Zen has two meanings. One, Zen is stabilizing the mind. Another is Zen is realizing the ultimate nature. There's relative Zen and there's absolute Zen. Anyway, so here is the stabilizing the mind. So then you might ask, remaining in what? In whatever you're aware of. Be it with support, with an object like watching the breath. That means if you're meditating on watching the breath, being mindful of the breath, then remaining aware of that. Or without the support, that is to say, if you're remaining in the state of non-distraction while not meditating on anything, then just if you're aware of that, remaining in that is what practicing remaining is. Then the next is one that does not allow you to lose the remaining or become distracted from it is called mindfulness. What I'm really defining and saying what deep, on a deeper level, what remaining is, what mindfulness is, and what awareness is. Even though I said to you, introduced you, the meaning of that is deep. So what is mindfulness? Mindfulness is that one that does not allow you to lose the remaining or become distracted from it is mindfulness. And then third is the watchful awareness, which is the vigilance aspect of mind. Then there is also an awareness that one is not distracted, an awareness that one is remaining, as well as an awareness of the object appearing to the five senses, such as sound and so on. This guard or sentinel that knows whether one is distracted or not, whether one is remaining or not, is the watchful awareness. In the shamatha meditation, we need these three things: remaining, mindfulness, and watchful awareness. But remaining, mindfulness, and watchful awareness are not separate from each other. They are all part of the same mind. One part of mind is remaining, abiding in stillness. Another part of mind, not separate from the first, is mindful of not being distracted from that remaining, and it protects and sustains that stillness. And then yet another aspect of mind's intelligence is aware of remaining, and it oversees that you are not being distracted, yet is also aware of all the objects appearing to the five senses. So the mind is doing all these three different things. In order to practice, you see, the calm abiding of the shamatha, mind has to work in all these three ways. But the third, the watchful awareness, is particularly important because without it, the other two may stop working. So first we train in, you see, practice with using an object. You see, you're doing a support like the breath. You understand? And slowly even that object dissolves. Because you see, first is what is happening is, first, actually, meditation is really to take you into a state of transcendence, to go beyond the duality. Because as long as you are in the duality, that is to say, what is duality? What is samsara? Samsara is where there's subject-object activity. That's samsara, where there's grasping and grasp. When you go beyond that, which is called the realization of shunyata, the ultimate nature, then you go into nirvana. In fact, meditation, if the meditation, however good it is, if it's still within the domain of duality, of subject-object, it will not bring you enlightenment. So therefore, at the beginning when you meditate, like there's a breath, and there is the breather, and there's the breath, you see there's the meditator meditating. However good your meditation, still you are within the subject-object activity. You understand? But after a while, they slowly dissolve. And then you become just the breath. And then after a while, even the breath as the object of your meditation dissolve, and you may remain in the pure awareness, in the state of nowness. Is that clear? Now here, then there's a danger. Particularly for people who do a lot of meditation. For people who don't do very much meditation, there's no problem. But it's been discovered people who do like vipassana meditation, who do 10 hours of meditation, many masters have noticed that sometimes when you're used to doing a lot of meditation, it's like you develop a little bit of like almost a handicap. That doesn't mean, by the way, saying, oh, I'm not going to meditate because it develop a handicap. No. In the case of those of you who not meditate, please, you have to meditate first. In fact, you have this handicap. It's a wonderful handicap. Anyway, that is to say, what happens is because you are so much, if you do too much, like when you do practice, if you do all this combination of mindfulness, awareness, and in the right way, then this problem will not rise. But if you too much like on the concentration, too much in the remaining, too much in the sitting, that there comes a danger that when we arrive at the state, when you go beyond the duality of subject-object activity and you're remaining in the state of nowness, but the danger comes in and habit comes in because you use so much sitting and doing and remaining that you begin to use that nowness as a subtle object. And that mind that remains in the nowness, a subtle subject. And the subject-object duality comes in, it can trap you back into samsara. That's why at this point, when you reach to this level, then the master will tell you, now destroy the meditation made by the mind. As one great master called Rinpoche, one master says, meditation made by the mind and fabricated by the intellect is the deceiving enemy. At that moment, you drop the meditation, you destroy the meditation made by the mind, and you let go of the meditator, the watcher. You understand? First you get rid of the meditation, then you dissolve even the meditator. And then you go beyond the duality, then you really reach the state of ultimate nature mind, which is called the vipassana in the high sense. Real vipassana is, but normally when you hear vipassana in the Theravada tradition, called insight meditation, is more shamatha based. Because I have friends of mine, Tibetan Lamas, who've been teaching many of the vipassana teachers in America and training them. And they always tell me that generally it's shamatha based, but when in Tibetan Buddhism, when you talk about vipassana, it's when you go beyond the mind, beyond the duality, when you destroy the meditation made by mind and reveal the explicit, the nature of mind, and reveal what is called the ultimate, the prajna paramita, the state of transcendence. That's called the vipassana. That's called the clay sink. You see? There where the duality dissolves, subject of the duality all dissolves also. Now, because I've been teaching very, very authentic, this is very authentic, authentic teaching. Really, the high teaching and authentic. That there is one level that in between, before you go beyond the, meditation made by destroy the, the meditator, or to let go of the meditator, Before that, there's one point, that is to say, is that in the skam abiding, when you reach to the deep stillness, when you reach to a deep stillness, in that deep stillness, because that stillness, that the peace that you arrive is not a stuck one, no? It's a very vibrant state in which movement can rise. You understand? Because movement rises, you should not, obstruct them. That's not natural. They should rise. You should allow them to rise. When they rise, you should recognize it for what it is. You understand? In the state of stillness, when the movement rises, you recognize it for what it is. Just in the sixth consciousness, not the seventh. But while recognizing, while in the state of movement, you should not lose the ground of stillness. Now, if you keep practicing that way, there will come a time when there is not so much a gap between the stillness and movement. That while in the state of stillness, there is movement, while in the state of movement, there is stillness. That's to say, it is a vibrant state of stillness where movement does not produce distraction, nor that the movement is obstructed in the stillness. You understand? When there's no longer a differentiation, no longer a kind of too much of a gap, then when you reach that, that's called the state of one-pointedness, which is the ultimate culmination of the shamatha practice of karma abiding. And when you reach to that level, then you can explode that one-pointedness into the, just as if you sharpen the pencil so much, the point dissolves. The one-pointedness dissolves into the state of transcendence. So when you reach to this level, then you see in the state of stillness, you see the movement like that. When you reach this, it's such an integrated state that actually not only are you calm and still in your meditation, but in your every action there is stillness and peace. In every day. This state is not about meditating on the object, it's about in every day. While in the state of stillness, the movement rises, you recognize it, but in the state of movement, you do not lose the ground of stillness. And when therefore there's the difference between that stillness movement, the gap between them dissolve, then you reach what's called the point of one-pointedness. In fact, this is from the very famous Mahamudra text, which says, Neto njuverangoshi, njusot neperansasin, njupalap, njirvana tekirangotubi. And so, now the benefit is that through the practice of calm abiding, then our mind settles. Through the practice of calm abiding, then our mind has settled into a state of peace and found stability. Just as a picture in a camera will sharpen as you focus it, so the one-pointedness of shamatha allows an increasing clarity of the mind to rise. Our restless thinking mind subsides into a state of deep peace. In fact, first comes the deep calm or the peace, then comes clarity, clear insight. How the wisdom do. You understand? Like for example, when a lake is unruffled by the wind, then it can reflect all the stars and all the planets. Then the clarity of our insight, of our own inner wisdom shines forth. So, when this happens, what happens when the thinking mind subsides into a state of deep inner peace, then all the scattered and the fragmented aspect of ourselves come home and we become whole. What is incredible, I'm showing the benefit of what really it brings to you. That is to say, all these scattered and fragmented aspects come home and we become whole and we become complete. In that completeness, in that wholeness, there's also the holiness is there. And also the healthiness. In fact, for example, like Latin or like in French, sa sente, saint, it means also health, also holiness. You understand? Then also another, that's one aspect of what it does in meditation. Another is, remember earlier I said that we have all kinds of contradictory voices that dictates and feelings that fight over control of our inner lives, Remember, there's like a war going inside. Don't you sometimes think that people, even when people go crazy, they can really feel like there's a war inside. Such an inner struggle. That kind of, you see, that is dissolves. In fact, you see, all this, how you say, these settle and you become friends with yourself. Because fundamentally, the meditation is becoming friends with yourself. And not only that, also the conflicts, the suffering, the pain of fighting with ourselves dissolve and is transformed. And for the first time, a deep and fundamental forgiveness for ourselves become possible. There's a sense of forgiveness, sense of self-reconciliation. Then we become well in our own skin and have more self-confidence, self-esteem, self-worth. And so we can accomplish everything we want, because when you have that, confidence, real true confidence, self-esteem returns, then you have a confidence through this we can accomplish things. Also, what's amazing is that not only you're in touch with yourself here, you're in touch with others. You begin to understand others. You begin to understand others. Then from that is the beginning of compassion, the empathy, the entombment the others need and emotions. You understand? Then the negativity. What is amazing is negativity, and the speed and aggression of pacified. Because sometimes you see the speed and aggression, they feed each other, particularly in the West. There's because of speed and this hurriedness, the impatience, it makes you frustrated and aggressive. The speed and aggression connect together very much. One master, Sogyal Rinpoche, he always would say, biggest problem in the West is speed and aggression. So we need to therefore overcome the speed and go slow, but not slow in a sense in a slow motion. No, but when you really calm down and settle, you don't become slow and not capable of doing anything, hello. You don't become like that, you see. In fact, you become very effective. You can very slowly, you can accomplish a lot. Like as Shakespeare says, make haste slowly. You can accomplish a lot. Like this great master called Sogyal Rinpoche. He is always so calm. He's the main disciple of my master. And he became the teacher of the Dalai Lama. The most important teacher of the Dalai Lama is him. He died actually in 1991. He was incredible. People used to call him he looks like a mountain. They call him Mr. Universe. Some of the young lamas call him Mr. Universe. He's incredible. So peaceful, compassionate. So compassionate. And he's got the whole time in the world. And doors are always open from morning till evening. People can come whenever they want. There's no schedule, no rendezvous, no... And during that time, he sees people, respond to the question. In the mornings, he would remain in silence. Until about 11 o'clock, he would not speak. He would always be practicing. People can come and sit and be there. It's such an incredible aspect when you come there. It's like you're in the seventh heaven. And then also very much you see, and then afterwards when people can ask questions, then he can teaching, all kinds of teachings he gives, to all the lamas, to the young. Many of the young lamas, the incarnate lamas, he was like their grandfather. All of them would be completely tamed by him. Why? Because he never scolded them or never chided them, but actually they all behave because he knows exactly what they're all doing. Like one lama, the young lama, one evening went out, some kind of party or something he did. Next morning, he said, "Oh, did you have a good time last night?" He knows exactly what's going on. He reads your mind, he can tell also when you will die, but he would not say it. He can everything. So because they know everything, so they have to behave. He's the one that blows Dalai Lama's mind. Dalai Lama's get amazed by him. And he's like, so much. And you know what? After he died, we saw he had written 24 volumes. I don't know, where did he write 24 volumes? He's always seeing people. Well, seeing people, then he's just writing. And he just writes in one go, with no correction necessary. Just comes from wisdom mind. The teachings are given us, so many teachings, like all life has been teaching. All life has been answering people's questions. All life has been building monasteries. It's like so much accomplished, so many students he trained, so much is done. It just, everything there's no hurry at all, there's no space, but so much is accomplished, not wasting a single moment. That's when you overcome speed and aggression. Then in that process you see frustration, tension, turbulent motion diffused. Then the unkindness, the violence and harm in us. Like, devil is, we conquered the devil inside. And then what happened? Then we really, we connect with the fundamental goodness, with the inherent good heart. You see, then from that love, compassion, appreciation, devotion, faith, all rise also. All that virtues rise from that mind. That is what meditation does. And I sometimes feel is the highest form of inner disarmament. Then, as we continue, you see, as we continue, then from that state of calm abiding, then you see the expansive clarity of the clear insight dawns, and ego dwindles, the duality dissolves, and the grasping tendencies. That is to say, then when you go beyond the mind to enter into the space of the state of transcendence, then what happens is there is how to say, there is, as Buddha said, in very famous teaching, he said, mind is devoid of mind, nature of mind is clear light. In fact, what's amazing is that statement, mind is devoid of mind, nature of mind is clear light. It's the first word, mind. The whole first vehicle of teaching Buddha is related to that. First turning of the wheel of the Dhamma related to that. Mind is the first vehicle of turning the wheel of the Dhamma. Second is mind is devoid of mind, is second. And the last is clear light, is the last turning of the wheel of the Dhamma. The entire teaching of Buddha is summed up in this one line, which my master Jamgon Khyentse Lode really said that, and Dalai Lama in his teaching always quotes him in the industry, that is to say, ultimately his mind is devoid of mind, nature mind's clear light. So what happens is this, that at that moment the ordinary mind dissolves, revealing the clear light, the cognizant. You understand? The nature mind. Just as when the cloud dissolves, what happens? Then the sky-like nature mind is revealed. Out of the sky nature mind shines forth one's true nature, the Buddha, like the sun. And sun has many wonderful qualities, such as it has tremendous brilliance, isn't it? Brilliance, light, that's wisdom. It has tremendous warmth, that's love and compassion. It has the power to give life. That is to say, when you reach to that level of wisdom, when you reach to that level, you have the wisdom that knows. You have the compassion that cares. You have the power to liberate and benefit beings. These are the three qualities of enlightenment. Which is the potential of enlightenment, they begin to manifest. So therefore, gradually you see, your potential of enlightenment begin to manifest as the obscuration defilement is removed. As Buddha said, sentient beings are Buddhas, that yet they are temporarily obscured. Once the obscuration is removed, they are Buddha indeed. Then like this great master, like Tengu Khyentse Rinpoche, then you see only wisdom, compassion, and the pure power. Do you understand? I'm just actually giving you what is our goal of life, what we should strive for, ultimately to realize. Don't limit yourself, darlings. Don't limit yourself. You limit yourself, you miss life. The purpose of life is much more than just living. There's something much more to realize in nature, to help to also bring about the liberation of others also. Very much. So that you see the very much, as you said, you realize, you see at that moment, at that moment, that wisdom that knows, the compassion that cares, and the power to liberate and benefit beings, very much. And so, this is giving you from the beginning where we are to what we can be. Really giving you the big picture, the full picture. Goal that we should strive, pledge. Understand? strive to realize. We should aim high and live simply. In fact, when you have like these teachings, you see, then what happens is, what is incredible is that when you discover this, then there is like the, you see, you find this like the inner refuge. That even though the world outside may be very complex, or even the world is falling apart, yet you know there's an inner refuge, there's something that never gives up on you. So that you know you never lose heart. Or another way of putting it is that even though, you see, the world is very complex, but yet you find a kind of an inner simplicity, or fearless simplicity, or a carefree dignity. You understand? With which you can cope with whatever comes in your life and transform them, everything onto the path of enlightenment. Be it suffering, be it happiness, difficulty, everything is transformed into the light. So that is all, and you have been wonderful. And reason why I share like this is because really I believe that each and you, it's not just in the teaching, I really believe that all of you, all of us have the potential of enlightenment. Our Buddha nature, all of our Buddha nature is as good as any Buddha's Buddha nature. Really. However, it said in the teachings, one ground, two paths. One ground means on ultimate nature, there's not the slightest difference between Buddhas and us. There's no two grounds. Our nature and Buddha's nature are the same. Yet, there's two paths. One ground, two paths. Is Buddha's recognized nature became enlightened, whereas we fail to recognize nature, became confused. So all the teaching of Buddha is how to help us to come back to realize our nature and overcome and purify the delusion. Yes, that's the point, yes, I remember. Is that, for example, like, there's one very good example when you talk about the nature of mind, and one very good example is the example of the movie projector. Movie projector become, the eight consciousness I spoke about can be also related to the movie projector. Now when you talk about the movie projector, I won't go into the whole thing because time is going, so we won't have time to, I think, but just to get to the main point is, if you really go and look behind and see who is like responsible for the movie. If you go and look into the movie projector, go behind, you find there's a little bulb, isn't it? That's giving light. And when the light goes on the frame and moves, then it gives the, Without this light, there's no cinema, isn't it? So in fact, light is being misused by the cinema. But the light itself is not involved at all. It doesn't matter whether it's a pornographic movie or it's a movie about Jesus Christ Superstar or Buddha. It doesn't really matter. Whatever movie it is, So that is to say, what is amazing is, even though the light is being misused by the ego to grasp, to make all the cinema, but in fact, on the deeper level, it's completely unstained, completely uninvolved, completely free. That is to say, when you go into the deeper nature of mind, that you realize there's also when anger or negative, because when you have the self-awareness, when you have self-awareness really, when you have settled the mind, stabilized mind through meditation, when you really have the understanding of the awareness of really the nature of mind, then what happens is, you're a little bit separate from the projection. You're not so involved in the projection, in the cinema. You see the illusion of it. So that like when a thought rises, even though a realized person, even though a negative emotion rises, It's like almost, even though a negative emotion rises, like an anger rises, you don't get involved in it. You understand? On one moment, negative emotion comes. The next moment, when you look directly into the face of that, it dissolves. Like when you shine a light in the darkness, it dissolves. Like you realize that even though on the surface the negative emotion rises, but if you really look into the innermost nature of mind, it is actually non-existence. It dissolves it. It is not there. Just as, for example, sky and the clouds. There are clouds in the sky, and you feel, often we think that the cloud is the sky. But if you take a plane and go beyond the sky, there's an infinite space that's never ever touched by the clouds. So there's an infinite aspect of mind that's never ever touched by the delusion. So through meditation, when you come to realize that really the vast expanse of the nature of mind, then with that vision, with that insight, with that wisdom, then whatever rising negative emotion comes, you realize to be just an illusion. Just a cinema. It's not real. You understand? And therefore able to liberate negative emotions. So as I said, the reason why I shared it with you, I do really believe, really doesn't matter whether you're Australian or German or French, American, whatever, whether you know these teachings, don't know these teachings, whether you're Christian, Buddhist, Hindus, doesn't matter. All of us are the same. And I share this wisdom, and so that you can, by actually taking this, may improve yourself. Thereby, if you really take this teaching to heart, then when the moment of death comes, you will have fun. Then it's really, success is not, for example, many great Tibetan masters, they are so discreet, even though they may be highly realized, they never show any miracles or any, signs of accomplishment. They are always really, it's like, just as people sometimes, like in the West or in the politicians, they try to show more of their qualities. Even they show what they don't have. Whereas the wonders of these, they really do all they can to hide what they have. And what is amazing, but only time they show sometimes is after they died. What happens when they die? The body goes into rainbow body. The whole physical body dissolves into the light. The body is reduced, becomes smaller and smaller, dissolve into light. I've seen many cases like that myself. Or when they die, the body dissolves into the tremendous rainbow light comes, So therefore, you see, only time you can a little bit show off is after you die. And when you die, that time you're successful, then you're a success in your life. Because you measure the success of life is at the moment of death. Because the moment of death is two things count, how you've lived and the state of your mind. So if you really live this teaching this way, the moment you die, you see, at the moment of death, what happens is all the thinking ego mind, all the delusion that obscure the mind. In fact, you can read this in chapter 15, because this is more at the end, so I'm going to hurry. So all the thinking, there are two kinds of dissolutions. There's the outer dissolution of elements, but the inner dissolution of all the negative emotions, like the anger, desire, ignorance, all the 81 thought and emotion states which obscure the inherent nature, they die. As they die, what is revealed is called ground luminosity, the clay lab of your fundamental nature. Sometimes the near-death account, they speak of that as being meeting with God. It's actually similar. So when that happens, if you practice in life, if you recognize the nature of mind, you see, then when it actually happens, you recognize it. Then when you recognize it, it's like a child running into his mother's lap. Then liberation takes place. You understand? So I hope and wish that that will be the case with you.